Okay, so the last video for classification section is going to be just kind of setting up some stuff, but there are already some videos in Teams. I'm going to show you real quick where to find those for, and I cannot see this at all. Let me see if I'm anywhere in the mirror, nearly in the right spot. Ooh, that's not going to show you. Okay. So I was trying to show you, but in Teams, it's not gonna look right under that video camera. So in Teams, under classification, notes videos, there's one that says dichotomous key, and then there's phylogenetic trees. I'm gonna go over both of these things. Bad lagging here. I go over both of these things in that video, so make sure you watch that. When you're finished with this, you're just going to tape this over here on the side or glue it up here to the side of this by the phylogenetic trees. You just put it over there. Okay, so just know that. I also need you to do this, use your notes, do this part. What we go over to here in just a second is going to help you to work this page. Some of the stuff we already have under eukaryotic cells will help you to work this page. And then this past section of classification. So do this. You're going to turn this paper in to the black tray. And then you're going to do this as well. So this is a dichotomous key. You're going to determine the names of these trees based on what their leaves look like. So you'll follow this and answer these questions. You'll do this, and then you'll turn this page into me. And this will be glued or taped over here, okay? So make sure you put your name on it right now. Stop, put your name on it somewhere. I don't care where it is. This is really the front. Actually, put your name right there. And then you'll turn this in when it's completely finished to the black tray. Okay, so the information, like I said, watching those videos over this will help you to do these keys. And I've already talked about them in a different video. But some of the information that if I had one thing that, and I only had time to study one thing, to kind of give me a good bit of information about life, about biology as a whole, then I would study this page right here. Okay, it is a really, really important page that has a lot of information there. So what we're looking at here is kingdoms. So kingdoms, that's like we're in the animal kingdom. There's the plant kingdom, fungi, protista, eubacteria, and archaeobacteria. Those are the most broad division that we talk about most of the time. And understanding what gets things in there and why, if you can understand that, then you have a great understanding of biology. And this page right here, if you understand the words as I say them and all that kind of stuff, that'll be awesome. If I do write a word and you don't understand what that word means, we have discussed it. It is somewhere in your notes. I'm available, whatever. You need to make sure that you understand everything that I'm saying here. So, in true fashion, it cut off all this stuff. So this says kingdom, cell type, and number, and then type of nutrition, cell wall, and why. Looks like some of it got cut off first. So do they have a cell wall and why? And then examples. So you need to fix that down the side there. Did not matter what I did, it kept cutting that side off. So pause this. Okay, and then we want to set this up and put our 6 kingdoms. So our first one, and I don't know that I have room to even write that in a marker. Maybe if I use. So we have archaeobacteria, E-R-I-A. If you can make it fit, that'd be great. Archaeobacteria, eubacteria, these are our 2 prokaryotic kingdoms, and then we have protista, or protist. I call that the reject kingdom because they don't fit anywhere else. fungi. And then I like to use green for Plantae. And then last and most certainly not least, Animalia. Okay, so we need to understand what type of cells do these have? How do they get their nutritions? Do they have a cell wall? And if yes, why? And then examples of them. So let's start with the type of cells. So we've talked about if you take every single living thing and you put it into two main groups of cells, you can either say they do or do not have a nucleus. These two kingdoms right here are both prokaryotes. Make sure you know what that word means. Pro means before, karyon means nucleus. So they started arging, adapting to their environment, reproducing on their own and growing. They started living life without a nucleus or membrane-bound organelles. They're extremely simple. These are prokaryotes. Every other living thing outside of bacteria, doesn't matter if it's archaeobacteria or eubacteria. If it's bacteria, I always say if bacteria is its last name, it's a prokaryote. So make sure that you know that all bacteria are prokaryotic. Every other living thing is a eukaryote. Every other living thing has a nucleus protecting its DNA. It has membrane-bound organelles like mitochondria and lysosomes and Golgi apparatus and all that kind of stuff. So just make sure you know the difference between those two. That's huge. Know that. Okay, type of nutrition. How does it get its nutrients? I want to start over here. Let's see. Where do I want to start? I want to start with plants because we all know that plants get their food through photosynthesis. So they are autotrophs. Okay, they're autotrophs. They get their food through photosynthesis all the time. That is what actually gets them into the plant kingdom. Okay, is that the fact that that's how they get their food. Animals, we know that no animals make their own foods. They are always heterotrophs. Hetero means different. Troph is talking about nutrients. So they get their nutrients from something different from themselves. These are the two most straightforward. So let's look at fungi. If you think about examples of a fungus, let's just go down here. Let's say mushrooms. Yeast. Think about the yeast that we used in our bread when we made bread during alcoholic fermentation. You remember we smelled the bag like every day as it was fermenting, and that yeast was breaking down the sugar. That yeast was not breaking down that sugar because it was trying to be nice or help the bread. It was breaking down the sugar because it needed food. The yeast itself needed food. So yeast, mushrooms, those are heterotrophs. The yeast was eating sugar. Mushrooms, other things, they're decomposers. This tends to be a I'm not sure. They tend to be decomposers, and they're not doing that to be helpful to the environment. They're doing that to get food. So these are also heterotrophs. And let's just put under here, they're not all decomposers, but that is a common niche or however you want to say that word, niche, whatever, of fungus, okay? So on animals, just put all animals, including humans. Okay? And then plants, all plants. Okay? Now, when we start getting into this one right here, these can be autotrophs or heterotrophs. When me and your parents were in high school or in school, we did not study Kingdom Protista. most likely. Maybe at this point we're getting some parents who might have studied it, but sometime between the time I graduated high school and started teaching, they had changed the kingdoms that we studied, and they combined some and they had taken some out. So like Protista, I call it the reject kingdom because it's really an odd little group of organisms. They are, there's really three options here because they didn't quite fit in. They have a nucleus, they're eukaryotic, they weren't quite a fungus, they weren't quite a plant, they're not quite an animal, they tend to always be unicellular. So we end up having animal-like, which are amoebas. Every time I think about Protista, I think about like things that live in water, things that swim around in lakes and stuff, which is why I don't really love lakes. And then there's plant-like. So these are the heterotrophs. They're amoebas. They have to take in food. They're the ones that I showed you in the eukaryotic cell section. If you'll go back to that page and look at those cells, they can look very much like bacteria, but they have a nucleus. Then you have plant-like, like algae. Algae used to be considered a plant. It's green, but the deal is that it's unicellular. It does make its own food. So these are heterotrophs. It's just a little bit, they just don't quite fit over here in this kingdom. So they moved them over here to plant-like protist. Animal-like protist don't quite fit over here, so they moved them over here to animal-like protist. And then the last one is a fungus-like protist. And slime mold. It's just an odd looking, they're single celled, they grow similar to a fungus. They kind of have similar jobs in the ecosystem to a fungus, but they're just not, they just don't quite fit into kingdom fungi. So we have the other three. Protista is a eukaryote, fungi, plantae, and Animalia, they're all eukaryotic. So Protista is made up of the other three eukaryotic kingdoms that don't quite fit there. They stuck them all over here. So that's why I kind of call it the reject kingdom, because they just don't fit somewhere else. But they're not a bacteria. They look like bacteria sometimes, but they do have a nucleus, so they don't fit over here either. Okay, but these are heterotrophs or autotrophs. It just depends on which one of these groups they fit in with, okay? And then eubacteria. These are the bacteria that live in and on you. EU means true, so these are our bacteria. They're the ones who live in our mouth and our skin, our intestines, and all over our bodies. They tend to be, let's just say usually, heterotrophs. They live in our mouth. They live wherever they do. They break down food that we eat or whatever, and they're doing that because they need the food. They're not making their own food. So these are usually heterotrophic, and they tend to live in their food source. So let's just say, for examples, let's just say bacteria that live in and on us. Okay, they're all around us, and typically they are where they are because that's where their food source is. And then the last one, Archaeobacteria, they are those extreme, they're called extremophiles. They tend to, they could be both heterotrophs and autotrophs as well. Photosynthesis is not the only type of synthesis for making food. Chemosynthesis is also an option, which is using the chemicals instead of light. Photo means light, so photosynthesis uses light for energy. Chemosynthesis would use chemicals to drive the reactions. So sometimes they can be autotrophs, but a lot of times they're heterotrophs. They live in these extreme environments. They actually sometimes create the extreme environment, like methanogen is a type of archaeobacteria that releases methane gas, and it makes its environment extreme. So these are bacteria that live in extreme environments. like really extreme environments. And so an example also could be a thermophile. So a thermophile, thermo is referring to heat. These are things that can live in a volcano, and they're alive and they live down there. So these are things that we typically do not encounter because we can't survive in the extreme environments where they naturally are. So you need to understand prokaryote. You need to understand eukaryote. What do these words, autotroph and heterotroph, mean? And then cell wall. We talked about a cell wall with a plant cell and a little bit with a bacteria cell. These are for two reasons. And so that's why I said cell wall and why. Why would they have them? Well, the one kingdom that does not have a cell wall ever is animal. So no. And the reason we don't is because we need to be flexible. We need to be able to move around. But cell walls can provide structure. We don't need that. Why do we not need cell walls for structure? Because we have a skeleton. So we don't have to have, we either have an endoskeleton, like you have an endo means inside, or an exoskeleton like a bug, let's say a beetle. They have that exoskeleton outside of their body. So one way or the other, animals typically have a skeleton. They don't need cell walls. Okay, we do not have them. Everybody else, yes, or sometimes. Okay, so let's start over here with bacteria. All bacteria are unicellular. All bacteria are one cell big. So they need a cell wall for protection. Okay, these things need cell walls to give them protection. Protista, they can have it because they're unicellular, but some of the animal-like protists might not have a cell wall. So let's just say yes for plant-like and fungus-like. Okay, they have them for protection. They're typically unicellular. These are all, like I kind of put these in order of, these almost could be flip-flop, but from like most primitive Archaeobacteria with the original life forms here, so all the way to like the most advanced this way. So as we move up, protists become a little bit more advanced, and so they can do more things as far as have more structures. They are eukaryotes, and so they can have cell walls if they're plant-like or fungus-like. So fungi, if you're looking at a mushroom, for instance, it has a structure. If you eat a mushroom, do you have to pick a skeleton out of the mushroom before you eat it? No. But that mushroom has a, I mean, I was going to draw a mushroom, but I don't know that I would be very successful. But a mushroom has a structure. And the reason it has a structure is because it has cell walls and it doesn't have a skeleton. So yes, for structure and protection. Yeast is a unicellular fungus. It only has one cell. The whole entire organism is just one cell big, so it needs cell walls for protection. Plants, typically the unicellular plants have been moved over here to plant-like protists. So yes, plants have cell walls, always. That is like a key to know that you're looking at a plant cell, and it is for structure. Okay, so again, if I could only look at one page and understand everything that it's talking about, this is it. Okay, so make sure this makes sense to you. If you have any questions about what anything means, email me or ask me when I'm here or whatever. Okay, I want this to make sense to you. I'm not expecting you to know a whole bunch of examples, but I do want you to be able to look at a cell and go, okay, it has a nucleus or it does not have a nucleus. And, it has a cell wall, it's unicellular, blah, 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 blah. So you need to talk about, oh, and we didn't even say this, cell type and number. Eubacteria, Archaeobacteria are unicellular. Protista is usually, well, these are unicellular. Fungi can be uni or multicellular. And then Plantae and Animalia are multicellular. If you can see it without a microscope, you're looking at something that's at least several cells. Okay, so you cannot see bacteria. You can't see all the protists floating around in the pond water or whatever. You cannot see yeast, but you can see like a mushroom and stuff like that. So those would be multicellular. If you can see it, you're looking at something that's multicellular. So know this, understand this. Let me know if you have any questions, okay? This is the last video on classification. So make sure that you check Gradebook and check Teams and make sure that you get everything turned in, okay? If you have any questions over this, please ask. This is very important that you understand it.